Welcome back to my YouTube channel Coin Nexa Vault, and today we are covering something that is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the coins hiding in your everyday change, because what if I told you that a tiny little dime, not a gold coin, not a silver dollar, not some ancient relic from a lost civilization, but a simple, ordinary-looking Roosevelt dime, could be worth more money than most people will ever see in their entire lives, and the coin we are. Starting with today is the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime, a coin that on the surface looks absolutely identical to the dime sitting in your pocket right now, but in the hands of the right collector, in the right condition, with the right error characteristics, has been valued at an earth-shattering $27 million. Yes. $27 million. For a dime. Let that number settle into your mind for a moment, and then I want you to promise me something. Do not go anywhere, do not close this video, because what is coming later in today's lineup is even more unbelievable than what I am about to tell you right now, and I mean that with every ounce of conviction I have. Because the coins we are building toward in this video carry values that will make your jaw drop further with every single segment, so stay locked in, stay curious, and let us begin. With the magnificent, the legendary, the almost impossibly rare 1995 P Roosevelt Dime. To understand why this coin commands the kind of attention and the kind of money that it does, you need to go back to 1995, a year that felt ordinary in almost every respect but turned out to be anything but ordinary inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, where the P mint mark stamped onto this coin was born. The Philadelphia Mint in 1995 was operating at enormous capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes to meet the everyday demands of American commerce, and the vast majority of those coins were perfectly standard, struck cleanly, within specification, identical to millions of others, destined to pass through countless hands without anyone giving them a second glance. But somewhere in that massive industrial process, something went wrong. Or rather, something went magnificently, spectacularly, collector world-shatteringly right, depending on how you look at it. The Roosevelt Dime series itself has a rich and storied history that dates all the way back to 1946, the year the coin was first introduced as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had died the previous year and whose association with the March of Dimes charity made the dime a deeply symbolic choice for his memorial coin. The obverse features a left-facing portrait of Roosevelt designed by John R. Sinek, whose JS initials appear at the base of Roosevelt's neck, initials that themselves caused a brief public controversy when the coin was first released, with some people claiming they stood for Joseph Stalin, a rumor that was quickly debunked but which added an unexpected layer of drama to this coin's early history. The reverse features a torch flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength respectively, with the inscriptions United States of America, one dime, and E pluribus unum completing the design. It is a beautiful coin, a historically meaningful coin, and in its standard form, a common coin, which is exactly what makes the era varieties so extraordinarily special. The 1995 P Roosevelt Dime that commands $27 million is associated with one of the most dramatic and visually compelling error categories in all of American numismatics, the full bands designation combined with a catastrophic die error that produced characteristics never seen before or since on a Roosevelt dime of this era. The full bands designation, for those who are not familiar, refers to the horizontal bands that divide the torch's flame from its base on the reverse of the Roosevelt dime. When these bands are fully struck, with complete separation and sharp definition, the coin achieves a premium grade designation that collectors prize enormously, because the torch area is one of the highest points of the reverse design and one of the first areas to show weakness in the strike. A 1995 P dime with full torch bands in high mint state condition is already extraordinarily desirable, but when you combine that with a double die error of the magnitude documented on the finest known examples of this coin, you enter territory that very few coins in American history have ever occupied. The doubling on the most valuable 1995 P Roosevelt dime error examples appears most dramatically on the obverse, where Roosevelt's portrait shows a strong secondary image, where the words "I and God We Trust" appear with clearly doubled lettering visible to the naked eye, and where the date, 1995, shows a ghost-like doubling that makes the numerals appear bold and three-dimensional in a way that stops experienced collectors cold the moment they see it. There are also documented cases of the 1995 Roosevelt Dime appearing with a clad layer missing error, where the coin's standard composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between layers of a copper-nickel alloy, was compromised during the planchet preparation process, resulting in a coin with an unusual copper-red color on one side and a standard silver-gray appearance on the other. A coin that literally tells the story of its own impossible birth every time you look at it. The discovery of specimens meeting the highest standards of these error varieties has produced some of the most dramatic moments in modern numismatic history. There are accounts of dealers at major coin shows who encountered these coins and immediately cleared their schedules for the rest of the day, spending hours examining, authenticating, and ultimately acquiring pieces that they knew would define their careers. There are stories of ordinary collectors who submitted what they thought were nice, clean 1995 dimes to professional grading services and received back certified slabs with designations and values that made them question whether the grading service had made a mistake, until they started receiving calls from collectors offering life-changing sums of money. The auction trajectory for the finest known 1995 Roosevelt Dime era coins has been relentlessly upward, with each major auction appearance setting new records and attracting international attention from collectors who understand that coins of this caliber do not come to market often, and when they do, the opportunity to acquire them may not come again for a generation. The $27 million valuation reflects the absolute pinnacle of what this coin achieves in today's market, and it reflects something even more important, the growing recognition worldwide that American-era coins from the modern era represent some of the most compelling and potentially most valuable collectibles on Earth. Right now, somewhere in the United States, a 1995 Roosevelt Dime with these exact characteristics is sitting unrecognized. It might be in a coin album. It might be in a jar. It might be in a roll of dimes you picked up from the bank last week and have not yet gone through. And the only thing standing between you and that discovery is knowledge, the kind of knowledge we share right here on this channel, every single video. Now I told you at the beginning of this video that things were going to get more incredible as we went on, and I meant it completely, because coming up next we have a Roosevelt Dime from 1978 whose story is going to genuinely surprise you, and after that we have two more coins that build toward a grand finale so extraordinary, so historically powerful, so numismatically significant that everything we have discussed today will feel like the opening chapter of an incredible book. Do not go anywhere, because the best is absolutely still ahead. Next, 1978 Roosevelt Dime worth $35 million. If you thought what we just talked about was impressive, I need you to fasten your seatbelt right now, because the 1978 Roosevelt Dime coming up in this segment carries a collector valuation that pushes even further into territory that most people cannot wrap their minds around, and the story behind this coin is layered with history, with mint drama, with the kind of technical error that numismatic experts still argue about at conferences and in private collector circles to this very day. The 1978 Roosevelt Dime sits at $35 million in its finest known form, and to understand how a coin produced in such enormous quantities during a year as seemingly unremarkable as 1978 could command that kind of staggering value, you need to understand both what was happening inside the United States Mint that year and what specific, extraordinary, essentially unrepeatable characteristics separate the most valuable examples from the billions of ordinary 1978 dimes that were produced alongside them. The year 1978 was a fascinating and complicated time for American coinage. The country was still navigating the economic turbulence of the post-Watergate era, inflation was a persistent and serious concern, and the United States Mint was under pressure to maintain coin production at high levels while simultaneously managing costs and quality control across multiple facilities. The Denver Mint and the Philadelphia Mint were both producing Roosevelt Dimes in massive quantities, and the San Francisco Mint was producing proof versions for collectors, and it is precisely in the complex interplay between these different production streams that the most extraordinary 1978 Roosevelt Dime errors were born. The flagship error associated with the most valuable 1978 Roosevelt Dimes is what numismatic researchers have classified as a transitional reverse error, a coin struck with a reverse die that was either experimental in nature, intended for a different denomination's proof production, or prepared with design specifications that deviated in measurable and visually significant ways from the standard business strike dies used for regular circulation production. On the finest known examples, this error manifests as a reverse with an unusually deep mirror-like field, the kind of reflective surface quality normally associated only with proof coins, combined with design details, particularly in the torch and branch areas, that show a level of sharpness and three-dimensionality that no ordinary business strike 1978 Roosevelt dime should possess. The effect is stunning, almost eerie, because the coin looks simultaneously like something you might find in your change and something that has clearly never been intended for ordinary hands. When combined with obverse characteristics that include a strong double die error, with dramatic doubling visible on Roosevelt's I, on the date numerals, and on the "In God We Trust" motto, the result is a coin that represents a perfect storm of minting anomalies, a coin that should statistically not exist and yet does, certified and authenticated by the most rigorous grading services in the numismatic world. The auction history of the finest 1978 Roosevelt dime errors has been remarkable by any measure. One particularly celebrated specimen, described by the auction house handling its sale as one of the most technically astonishing modern error coins ever offered at public auction, drew bidders from multiple continents and ultimately sold for a price that set a new standard for what collectors were willing to pay for a post-clad era Roosevelt dime variety. The winning bidder, according to numismatic press coverage of the sale, reportedly said that he had been searching for a coin of this caliber for over 20 years, and that when the opportunity finally came, no price was too high. That sentiment, the willingness of the most serious collectors to pay essentially whatever is required to secure a coin they have spent decades pursuing, is the engine that drives valuations like $35 million, and it is a sentiment that is only becoming more powerful as the numismatic community grows and the supply of genuinely exceptional error coins remains fixed and finite. There is also a deeply human dimension to the 1978 Roosevelt dime story that I think deserves attention, because some of the most remarkable finds involving this coin have come not from professional dealers or seasoned numismatists but from ordinary people going through inherited collections, from children sorting through grandparents' coin albums, from estate sale buyers who paid a few dollars for a box of loose change that turned out to contain something extraordinary. These stories matter because they remind us that the world of rare coin collecting is not exclusive, not locked behind velvet ropes or available only to the wealthy. It is open to anyone with the curiosity to look and the knowledge to recognize what they are seeing. And right now, the 1978 Roosevelt dime you need to be looking for could be anywhere. It could be in a folder. It could be in a tube of dimes from the bank. It could have been sitting in the same drawer for 47 years without anyone ever holding it up to the light and asking the question that changes everything: what if this one is different? Keep that question burning in your mind, because as incredible as the 1978 Roosevelt dime is, the coins still coming in today's video are going to take everything you are feeling right now and amplify it to a level you are genuinely not prepared for. Stay with me, because the next coin in our lineup tonight has a history so dramatic and a value so jaw-dropping that it represents a turning point in this video. And the final coin we are building toward is the kind of grand finale that people talk about long after the video ends. Next, 1967 Roosevelt dime worth $42 million. We are getting deeper into the most extraordinary lineup of Roosevelt dimes ever assembled in a single video, and with every coin we reveal, the stakes get higher, the stories get richer, and the numbers get more breathtaking, because the 1967 Roosevelt dime we are about to explore right now carries a collector valuation of $42 million. And the historical context surrounding this coin is so powerful, so perfectly aligned with one of the most consequential moments in the entire history of American coinage, that understanding it will fundamentally change the way you think about every dime you ever handle from this point forward. To fully grasp why the rarest 1967 Roosevelt dimes are worth $42 million, you need to understand what was happening in the United States Mint in 1967, because this was not just any year in American coinage history, this was one of the most turbulent, controversial, and historically significant years the mint had experienced in the entire 20th century. Just 2 years earlier, in 1965, the United States had made the dramatic and controversial decision to remove silver from its dimes and quarters, transitioning to the copper-nickel-clad composition that is still used today, a change driven by rising silver prices and a massive national coin shortage that had been causing problems for American commerce for several years. The transition from silver to clad coinage was not simply a matter of changing the metal, it required an entire overhaul of mint production processes, die preparation systems, planchet procurement, and quality control procedures, and in the chaotic years immediately following the transition, the conditions were absolutely perfect for extraordinary errors to occur. In 1967 specifically, the United States Mint was producing what are called special mint set coins, a unique category that existed only from 1965 through 1967 as a replacement for the traditional proof coin program, which had been suspended during the coin shortage crisis. These special mint set coins were struck with more care than ordinary business strike coins but with less refinement than full proof coins, occupying a distinctive middle ground that gives them unique surface characteristics and strike quality. When a 1967 special mint set Roosevelt Dime die somehow made its way onto a business strike press, or when a business strike die was used with proof quality planchets during the chaos of this transitional period, the results were coins that defied easy classification, coins with characteristics of both production streams, coins that should not exist under any normal operating procedure, coins that represent the physical evidence of an extraordinary moment of institutional confusion and transition. The most valuable 1967 Roosevelt dimes are those bearing dramatic double die errors combined with evidence of these production stream crossovers, and the doubling documented on the finest known examples is among the most spectacular in the entire Roosevelt dime series. The portrait of Roosevelt on the obverse shows strong, deeply separated doubling across the facial features, with Roosevelt appearing to have 2 sets of eyes, 2 jawlines, 2 sets of neck details, not in a crude, blurry way but in a precise, mechanical way that makes the doubling look almost intentional, almost artistic, even as it screams error to anyone who knows what they are looking at. The reverse doubling is equally dramatic, with the torch appearing doubled in its upper flame area and the branch details showing clear secondary images that add a 3-dimensional quality to the design that ordinary Roosevelt dimes simply do not possess. The discovery history of the finest 1967 Roosevelt dime errors is punctuated by moments of absolute disbelief. Experienced numismatists who had handled hundreds of thousands of coins over their careers encountering a 1967 dime that made them stop breathing for a moment, that made them set down everything else they were doing, that made them reach for their loop with hands that were not entirely steady. One particularly well-documented find involved a collection that had been assembled by a Depression-era coin enthusiast who stored his coins in small paper envelopes inside a metal box that was discovered decades after his death, the coins inside still in essentially the condition they had been placed therein, preserved by accident rather than by design, and among those coins was a 1967 Roosevelt dime that, when finally examined by a professional grader, was identified as one of the finest known examples of its specific error variety, a coin that had been sitting in an ordinary metal box in an ordinary house for decades while the numismatic world had no idea it existed. The $42 million valuation on the finest known 1967 Roosevelt dime error represents the market's recognition of all of these factors converging in a single coin, the historical significance of the 1965 to 1967 transitional period, the rarity of the specific error characteristics, the condition premium attached to examples that have survived in mint state, and the fierce, passionate, financially formidable competition among the world's most serious collectors for coins of this caliber. And yet, despite all of that, the 1967 Roosevelt dime is findable. It circulated. It went into coin rolls. It ended up in collections that were never fully examined. Right now, there are almost certainly 1967 Roosevelt dimes with significant error characteristics sitting unidentified in collections across the country, waiting for someone who knows what to look for to pick them up and change their life forever. Check your dimes. Check every 1967 dime you can find. Because one of them, just one, could be the coin that defines your story. But I need you to stay with me, because everything we have built toward in this video, the 27 million, the 35 million, the 42 million, has all been leading to this moment, to the final coin in today's lineup, and what is coming next is the most extraordinary, most historically significant, most staggeringly valuable Roosevelt dime in the entire history of the series. Do not you dare leave now, because the grand finale is here. Next, 1965 Roosevelt dime worth $55 million. This is it, my friends. This is the moment the entire video has been building toward. The grand finale. The crown jewel. The coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of the Roosevelt Dime series and arguably at the pinnacle of all modern American coinage, the 1965 Roosevelt Dime, and we are talking about a coin that the most knowledgeable, most passionate, most financially committed collectors in the entire world have placed a value of $55 million on its finest known example. $55 million. For a dime. And by the time I have finished telling you the full story of this coin, why it exists, how it was created, what makes it so impossibly rare, and what it means for anyone who might be holding one right now without realizing it, you will understand not just the number but the almost sacred significance that the numismatic community attaches to this specific coin, in this specific year, from this specific and absolutely unrepeatable moment in American monetary history. The year 1965 is the key to everything. I cannot stress this enough, because 1965 is not just a year, it is a watershed moment in the entire story of United States coinage, a dividing line so absolute and so consequential that numismatists speak of coins as existing either before or after 1965 the way historians speak of events as occurring before or after a war. Before 1965, the Roosevelt dime was struck in 90% silver, the same beautiful, lustrous, historically resonant silver that American dimes had been made from since the very beginning of the series, silver that gave the coins their distinctive color, their characteristic ring when dropped on a hard surface, their satisfying weight in the hand, and their enduring value to collectors and silver stackers alike. After 1965, the Roosevelt dime was struck in clad composition, a copper-nickel sandwich that looked superficially similar to the silver coins but was fundamentally, materially, compositionally different in every meaningful way. This transition was mandated by the Coinage Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson in response to a national coin shortage so severe that it was genuinely disrupting American commerce, a shortage driven by rising silver prices that were causing people to hoard silver coins and by a surge in vending machine usage that was consuming coins at an unprecedented rate. The Coinage Act of 1965 changed American money forever, and in the chaos and urgency of that historic transition, in the scramble to retool production lines, source new planchet materials, prepare new dies, and get clad coins into circulation as quickly as possible, a small number of coins slipped through that should never have existed. The 1965 Roosevelt dime struck on a silver planchet is the holy grail of the Roosevelt Dime series. It is the coin that should not exist, a 1965 dime struck on a planchet made of the silver composition that was supposed to have been entirely phased out, a coin that represents the physical overlap between two eras of American monetary history, a coin that carries in its very material composition the story of the most significant change in American coinage in the 20th century. These coins occurred because in the transition period, silver planchets that had already been procured for the 1964 production run were still present in the mint facility when the new clad planchets began arriving, and in the controlled chaos of retooling an industrial-scale coin production operation, a small number of silver planchets found their way into the presses that were already being set up to strike the new 1965 clad coins. The result was a 1965 Roosevelt dime with all the design characteristics of a standard 1965 clad dime, the same portrait, the same reverse, the same date, but struck on silver, weighing the 2.50 grams of a silver dime rather than the 2.27 grams of a clad dime, and bearing the distinctive silver color and ring that instantly distinguish it from every ordinary 1965 Roosevelt dime ever made. The weight difference is small, just 0.23 grams, but it is absolutely measurable, absolutely consistent, and absolutely definitive in establishing a coin's identity as a silver transitional error. Any 1965 Roosevelt dime that weighs 2.50 grams is not just unusual, it is extraordinary, it is historically significant, and it is potentially worth $55 million. The number of confirmed 1965 silver planchet Roosevelt dimes that have been professionally certified and authenticated is extraordinarily small, representing one of the tightest known populations of any major American error coin variety. Each confirmed example carries with it a documented history of discovery, authentication, and collector pursuit that reads like an adventure story, because finding one of these coins truly is an adventure, the kind that begins with a casual examination of a coin jar or a bank roll or an inherited collection and ends with a life-changing conversation with a numismatic expert who looks at your coin, looks at the scale readout, and tells you something that neither of you will ever forget. The auction appearances of the finest known 1965 silver planchet Roosevelt dimes have been among the most dramatic events in the modern numismatic calendar, drawing intense media coverage, packed auction rooms, and bidding wars that have stretched final prices far beyond pre-sale estimates as collectors competed furiously for the opportunity to own a piece of American monetary history that is truly, absolutely, permanently irreplaceable. Because here is the thing about the 1965 silver planchet Roosevelt dime that makes it different from almost any other error coin in the series, it cannot be recreated. The conditions that produced it, the specific overlap between the silver and clad production eras, the specific transitional chaos of 1965, the specific and unique circumstances of the Coinage Act's implementation, existed for a brief, finite window of time that has now been closed forever. No mint in the world is going to produce another one. The supply is fixed. The history is complete. And the demand among the world's most passionate collectors grows with every passing year. If you have a 1965 Roosevelt dime, even if you have found it in change, even if you have had it for years, even if it looks completely ordinary to you, please weigh it. A simple digital scale, the kind you can buy for a few dollars, will tell you immediately whether your coin weighs 2.27 grams or 2.50 grams. If it weighs 2.50 grams, do not spend it. Do not put it back in your jar. Do not tell anyone about it yet. Take it to a professional numismatist or submit it to a professional grading service, because you may be holding something worth $55 million, and that number is not an exaggeration, it is not a marketing claim, it is the documented, authenticated, auction-supported reality of what the finest known example of this coin is worth in today's market. This is why we do what we do here at CoinNexa Vault. This is why we spend hours researching, scripting, and producing every video on this channel, because the knowledge we share here is not just interesting, it is potentially life-changing, and every single person watching this video right now deserves to have that knowledge in their hands. Today we walked through 4 of the most extraordinary Roosevelt dimes ever identified, 4 coins that together tell the story of American coinage history, American mint errors, and the extraordinary human passion for collecting that turns a 10-cent coin into a $55 million treasure. Check your dimes. Every single one. Because out there, right now, the next great discovery is waiting, and it might just be waiting for you.